10,000 subscribers. Wow, absolutely amazing. Honestly, it would be a lie if I sat here and said that I didn't think this would happen. I did think so. I am a little bit surprised it's happened as quickly as it has. And obviously that doesn't take away from just how I feel. Honestly, it feels really amazing. I truly appreciate your support, liking the videos, watching the videos, and obviously subscribing to the channel. Now, as most YouTubers do when they hit a milestone like 10k, here comes an obligatory Q&A. I did this for 3k, I did it for 5k, so obviously for 10k. But what's going to be different in this one, as opposed to the others, is that I'm going to attach alongside it a giveaway. And within that giveaway, what I'm going to be giving away is this thing right beside me. It's actually one of my England t-shirts. This was the England t-shirt that was given to the players around 2012. So I wore this at the European Men's Team Championships, or I think that might have been the last year. It was the Thomas Cup qualifiers. It might have changed before. And I took it along to the 2012 Thomas Cup, although in both those matches we wore white, so I didn't wear this one at that Thomas Cup. But the reason I've got it hung here is this t-shirt doesn't really fit me very well anymore. It's a little tight, so I didn't want to put off any potential viewers. Plus, if anyone wants to win it, I will wash it, don't worry. But yeah, I did think of that as well. So yeah, how you can win this t-shirt in this giveaway is very simple. All you need to do is be subscribed to the channel. So if you haven't done that, do that now. Like the video and then just leave a comment with the simple thing. What I want you to do is just tell me who your favourite player is or pair and why. It doesn't have to be a current player. It could be any player throughout all of badminton history. As you know, I love badminton from all the way from its beginnings until now. So it'd be silly of me and not right, I don't think, if I just put that question to now. I want to see as many crazy names as I possibly can. So yeah, that's how you do it. Okay, that's that part out of the way. There's one other thing before we get to the questions themselves, and that is that at the end of the video, I do have an update for you on regards to the future of the channel. I angled that in my last video, my last Beckman's breakdown, so I will be revealing that. It's nothing too world-shaking and groundbreaking, but it's something that I think can help the growth of this channel, and it requires your support. So be sure to stick around to that, or just do what anyone else would do and click the timestamp or skip forward. Your choice. Right, let's get into these questions. Do you see any men's singles player dominating like Un Se-young? Simple question is, right now, no, I don't think so. Un Se-young's domination is on a par with like Kento Momota or Lin Dan or Lee Chong-wei, you know, that kind of level where they're pretty much winning every tournament they play, if not like 95%, and even if they don't win, they tend to get all the way to the final or to the last stages. Do I see anyone in men's singles like that now? No, it's far too open, and even like the next generation coming up, I don't see it. There's plenty of very promising and talented players, but none that I'm like, wow, they're going to really dominate. And I'm not sure, well, I'm not sure we'll ever get one of those again. That's absolutely idiotic to say, because who knows what happens. You could have said that before Lin Dan came along or before Momota. You never know who's around the corner. But looking at some of the junior players and looking at the players that are just going to be hitting their peak, you know, your Laksha Sen, Kunovit, San Kodai generation, and then like the other generation, Alex Lanier, Awi Farhan, Huzan, all those kind of players, I don't see anyone that's going to take the world to the level that Un Se-young is. Make a dream team for men's singles, women's singles, men's doubles, women's doubles, and mixed doubles, and you can include even retired players and cross countries. That's quite a broad one. And I want to caveat before I answer this is that obviously there's one or two, well, definitely one in my answer that comes from a little bit further back. And I know people are going to say, yeah, but those players, you know, the players nowadays would absolutely kill those players. And there's actually a question about that later on that I'm going to answer, but I'm just going based off how good they were, how dominant, and would they fit into a team. So I've gone for men's singles, Lin Dan. I think that's an obvious choice, the GOAT of badminton. Women's singles, Un Se-young. We've just spoken about her. She is incredibly dominant. And although there are players in the past, you know, the golden generation that could beat her, I just still would pick Un Se-young. I think she's proven herself in some team events that she can deliver when it matters. For men's doubles, that was a really tricky one. I've gone for Lee Yong-dae and Jung Jae-sung. I just think that's just a personal one. I've seen so many matches in team events where they were able to get big wins. I was there at the Thomas Cup in 2008 where they beat Setiawan and Kido in an absolute epic match. That was in the Astora as well. I've seen them beat Kaiyun and Fai Feng in China at the Sudirman Cup. So I think in terms of being able to, obviously they're just a fantastic pair as well, but I think in team events, unable to deliver under pressure, they're one of the best. So that's why I went for them. For women's doubles, this is my pick from a little while ago, Gufei and Gujun, the most dominant pair in badminton history, period. They rarely lost. And actually, when I watched them play, when I did the video on them, I think if they were to be able to play with the equipment now, with better shoes, obviously rackets is a big thing, I still think they could actually be a competitive pair in this days. I think they're good enough that they would adapt to what is needed in this day and age. So, Gufei and Gujun. And then for the mixed doubles, again, another tricky one. All of these were quite tricky. Well, other than Dan, he was an obvious choice for me. I've gone for Zheng Siwei and Wang Yechong. Just, you know, one of the most dominant and best mixed pairs ever. There's a lot that can be put in that category. They're just very good at whenever the chips are down, even if they're not playing particularly well or they find themselves down. This is something Christian said when I interviewed him. They do find a way to win. How many times have we seen them come back from the brink of death to win? So I think that's quite key in a team match, because sometimes you can be not just down in your own match, but overall tie. So having a pair like that is great. Plus they're just phenomenal. So that would be my team. Who is your favourite player of all time? Okay, I wrote these questions down with giving it a little bit of thought, but this one is an absolute difficult one. My favourite player of all time, well, I did a video on this for the BWF. My hero, I called it, or my icon, was actually Hendra, who was the Olympic silver medalist from 2000, the world champion in 2001. I don't know, I grew up, again, some of you have heard these stories before, but I grew up watching obviously a lot of badminton tapes. I watched a lot of badminton from the 1980s and early 1990s. But another one I had was actually from the 2000 Thomas Cup. And within that, there was two matches that involved Hendra, and that's where he played Peter Gader in the semi-finals, and he lost that one in a really epic, fantastic match. And then he came back in the final because Indonesia obviously beat Denmark, and he played Juan Zhe, and he won that one in another great match. And just watching those two, I just remember those matches were just, I'd watch those tapes quite a lot. And Hendra, just the way that he was just fight. You know, he was quite a short player, quite stocky. I can imagine that a lot of players were like, no, you need to be quite tall and slim to be a singles player. So he went against that stereotype. And I just felt that his front court control and skills, absolutely second to none. I do believe that Peter Gader once said that the best front court player he ever played against wasn't Taufik Hiliat, who most people think it was actually Hendra. And I'd agree, there are some shots, I think, in the world final where he beat Peter Gader that were absolutely out of this world. So is he my favourite player of all time? He's definitely on there. I think that would have to be a list, but just off the top of my head, and I've said it before and I'm going to stick with it, Hendra. What is your opinion on 15 points scoring system over 21 points? Does this change will affect the players? Will this affect the players? What are my opinions on it? Honestly, I don't really see the point in it. You know, 3 to 21 or 3 to 15, you're just making the game shorter. For me, that makes sense in some respects. You know, we want to get through, you know, we don't have so many late finishes, and maybe there's, I know Vito said that would mean less fatigue on the players, less injury prone. But 5 to 11 is something that was put forward and that was voted against. And that's not even shorter, but it's pretty damn close. Well, if you win it in 3 games, it'd be 3 points actually, sorry. So it's incredibly close in terms of overall point scoring. And I think actually 5 to 11 would be a better choice, because the other reasons that BWF always put forward is getting to the high points in a match faster, or you know, general excitement. And I just think 5 to 11, I've seen it work in the Danish League, the China Super League, and other things. It is a little bit more exciting in that respect. As in, like, when I'm watching it, even if it's like 3-love, you're like, oh, that could be quite a decisive lead already. Obviously, up to 21, that's absolutely nothing. And even, I think, up to 15, that would be nothing. So I think I get that it would be shorter. So yes, you could argue less injuries and less strain on the players. But in terms of the other side, which is the excitement and the entertainment value, it makes absolutely no sense. Plus, we have to realise that badminton is a sport that a big part of it is the physical side. And so I think just reducing the match time is going to put in a disadvantage some players that actually would play more heavily into the physical. And I think as a sport, we need to, what we can market ourselves on a lot more is that badminton is a sport that does require you to think very fast, does need you to be very strong physically, good cardiovascular strength, excellent power in your legs. You've got to be very athletic, you've got to be very mobile, you've got to be thoughtful in terms of tactics and stuff. And I just think just by shortening it, is just not the way forward. I think what we've got currently is fine. I'd be okay with 5 to 11. I know we're not going to go back to the old scoring system of only scoring a point on your serve, but 3 to 15 over 3 to 21, personally, I think it's absolutely pointless. Have you ever considered coaching or collaborating with pro players behind the scenes? Well, I have been a coach since I was 18. You have to be 18 to get a level 2 coaching qualification in England, and a level 2 allows you to coach privately or coach on your own. If you're a level 1, you can only be an assistant. I became an assistant coach or level 1 when I was 16, so I'm 37 now, so I've been coaching sessions on my own for almost 20 years, and I've been part of coaching and stuff since obviously longer than 20 years. So I have been coaching, and I still coach this day. I coach privately, I coach at schools. I don't do too much high performance stuff anymore. It's much more club based, which just suits my needs right now. In terms of collaborating with pro players behind the scenes, I've done a couple of things. I obviously did that video with Hans Christian Wittinghus, where he kindly let me interview him about his whole career. That interview took a long time. Obviously, Christian Luque is not a pro player, but obviously he was been heavily involved with pro players. I've messaged here and there, DMs on, with certain top pro players. Never really broached the subject of, can we do a video together? I don't know, I didn't feel right to do it. I don't see myself as a big star in the badminton world yet, maybe in the future. And so, I don't know, it just didn't feel right for me to kind of reach out to these players yet. But maybe it's something, it is something that I actually want to do more of. I found when I did the last video where I interviewed Christian Luque, and his insights just made that video pop so much more rather than it just being all on my own research. So for other videos where I talk about other players and maybe getting those guys involved to tell their own story would be really good. So it is something that I have been thinking, but just I haven't done yet, purely because I don't know, like I said, I just didn't feel like I'm at a level that warrants it. I'm not sure if that's being silly or not, but that's just the way I felt about it. How did you get into professional badminton? How did you get into the England team? So this links up, a lot of people have asked me about my own badminton journey. I think I might have answered this in previous videos. So it kind of, to answer that question, obviously you got to kind of brush on that a little bit. So my mum was a professional player. She was a world medalist in 1980. She got the bronze in women's doubles. She's been a Commonwealth Games medalist. She's been into the All England semi-final twice. Absolutely, in terms of achievements, far greater than I've done. I think she almost got 100 caps for England as well. Uber Cup silver, actually, back in the 80s. England were once upon a time and absolutely one of the powerhouses in badminton. But yeah, so my mum was a professional player. She had retired when she got pregnant with me, or she started to stop, but she obviously still carried on. She played all the way up until she sadly passed away 5 years ago. So, and my uncle as well, so her brother was also an England player, played for England and was won numerous international tournaments as well. So I kind of grew up with it. My parents met at a badminton club. My dad is actually a pretty good player. He's played for the county in terms of how England is divided up into counties. He's played for where I come from, Surrey. He's played for them in the vets. So yeah, come through from a badminton background. Never really took it too seriously though. I did play tournaments from the age of 9, 10, 11, county tournaments and some England tournaments. But yeah, never took it too seriously. I was good, but was okay. It was only until I was 16 that my cousin said, "Oh, you should come down to this local club." Actually, the club that I had been coming to since I was a young kid, Wimbledon Rackets and Fitness Club, because there was some what you'd call it elite summer training sessions, and he said you would really enjoy it. So I went down, and I did enjoy it. And the coach that was running it, Stuart Waddell, he was running those sessions. There were other players. I think even like someone like Chris Langridge, the Olympic bronze medalist, might have been at one of those early ones. But there was players of his level and around that at this camp. I then obviously trained every single day. I improved massively. The next season, I started to win a lot more tournaments. Got kind of semi-noticed by the England coaches. I started to take private lessons. I started to train much harder, much more frequently. Took it seriously, basically, because up until then I would play a tournament, but I would play at county training. But that isn't anything too amazing in England. If you know, you know. But yeah, kind of took it more seriously over the next year. I mean, by the end of the season, after I took it more seriously, I was in what we called England cells, which is basically like little England training camps, training sessions that were run like once, twice a week in different areas around the country. I steadily kept improving because obviously I kept playing more, and then I got sent to my first England trip when I was 17 to Sweden, where I played a tournament. We also played a friendly, and I played in that, and it kind of grew from there. By the time I was under 19, I was in the England team. I was England 2, got to the final of the Nationals, played Six Nations, which is basically a slightly smaller version of the Europeans, got to the quarterfinals there. And then I went to university, actually. Me and Raj Usef went to Loughborough University at the same time. We both left it at the same time within less than a year because both of us realised that our badminton was slipping and that's where we wanted to do it. So I finished uni, went back to training, trained full-time at Wimbledon. And then I think it was like a year or two later that I played in that Thomas Cup, and that's how I got into the England team. And then I was kind of, yeah, I played tournaments, I played here and there. I'm not going to go into any more details than that because it obviously leads into why I stopped, which is a whole story in itself. Something I actually haven't really kind of tried to digest and turn it into anything. I haven't given it much thought. Then, yeah, I decided to stop around 2012 actually, and then I did come back 2 years later and played a few more times for England. But yeah, no, that's kind of a very quick surmise of how I got into professional badminton and into the England team. So it goes to show that I didn't play it seriously. I did play quite a lot, obviously grew up around badminton, but it wasn't until I was like 16 years old that I took it seriously. And within a year, I was in the England junior team. Within like 3 years after that, I was in the England senior team. So if you've got the talent, even if you are playing but you're not taking it too seriously, and it's a little bit later into your teen years, you can still make it. I wouldn't say that I made it massively, but you can still do pretty well. Maybe that's slightly changing in this day and age, but I would probably argue that it isn't. So if anyone's sitting there and you're 15, you're like, I'm playing a bit, but I'm not taking it too seriously, is it too late? No, it's not too late if you are, especially if you're from England. Okay, next question. How do you go about trying to figure out how to tell a player's story? That's actually quite an interesting one. So it's linked a little bit more towards the stuff I'm doing now, the YouTube channel. So how do I do it? Well, I kind of have an idea in mind. Like usually I'm sat around and I'm just thinking about what story I want to next. What player, what pair, what tournament, what interesting fact can I remember? Because, you know, I've been watching badminton for a number of years and I've got a lot of these milling around, and usually I find one. And then I do a little bit of research into it to try and find an angle, and usually from that research, watching more matches, reading some articles, watching some interviews, all that kind of stuff. And sometimes I might even ask a few people on Instagram now or whatever to go, you know, we've spoken about this player in the past and I'm trying to do a story. Is there anything that you can think of that might spark an idea over to me? Once I got that initial spark, usually I try to think of like the general kind of path of the story, or the general kind of question, the main question I want to answer. And then I kind of just go from there. Obviously I did this in my last Q&A. I would obviously then go more heavy into the research, you know, look at the whole player's career, all that kind of stuff. Or if it's a story about a specific tournament, I would look a little bit more, even more detail into just the little bits around that. So that's how I go about kind of doing that side of things. It's by no means some amazing process, but usually it sparks from sitting around and just, what am I going to do next? And I just think of a player, and usually I have a few, and after a couple of days, usually one is becoming more and more is stronger in my mind, and I'm like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. There's a little bit of, is this going to be a popular video? Does play a little bit of a factor in my mind, but generally speaking, it's like, that sounds really cool, that sounds interesting, I'm going to enjoy making that. I'm going to enjoy researching it, and so if those tick those boxes, then I'll proceed with it. So Yeah, okay, that's how I do that. How did everything start that you opened a YouTube channel to make these kinds of videos? It was in lockdown actually. So just before lockdown, I was the head coach of Wimbledon Rackets Fitness Club, the club I mentioned in one of my previous questions. I wasn't particularly happy. There were a lot of things going on. There was a lot of, like you find everywhere, internal politics, and I just had enough. And it was around that time I was looking for a way out in terms of what else could I do, because I couldn't just like quit with no other job lined up. That I started to speak to Jonathan from Swift Badminton, which was a huge channel at the time. It still is, but it's not active anymore, sadly. I knew him because he was someone that would be trained at Wimbledon. He's got a number of younger brothers that one of them still trains quite a lot at Wimbledon. And he'd been someone that had come to a few of the sessions that I ran. So we knew each other a little bit. He reached out to me because he was doing this footwork course and he wanted me to do a special episode on diving, which I did, and that got us chatting about how I could maybe link up with him to do videos on YouTube with him. So we did that, and we did a number of videos that are really successful that I'm really proud of. We had a lot of fun doing it. But then when lockdown hit, I know that he contracted long COVID, and things were just obviously really difficult to film at that time anyway. But it was around that time that he got approached by BWF to start doing the kind of videos that you might have first saw me on, the BWF community stuff. The stuff I still do to this day on TikTok, actually. He wasn't particularly interested because he wanted to get away from that and look at other things, but he proposed that I get involved. So this guy from a company called HBS called Tim reached out to me about creating some videos for Facebook, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. And I jumped at the chance because it was something I could do even in the lockdown, and it was just something that I was always been quite interested in making videos. I'd really enjoyed doing the YouTube stuff with Jonathan, but this stuff with BWF was a little bit more up my street, kind of telling stories of players, but in a much more condensed way. I did that. I still do that to this day, so I've been doing it for 5 years, but after about a year of doing that, I kept thinking to myself that these are the kind of stories that, doing it for Facebook or Instagram, you've got to keep it to say 1 minute to 3 minutes. So you've got to, you can only tell so much. And I've always felt that, okay, YouTube might be the better place to tell these stories in a much longer format. So I think it was after a few years of doing that, was it 2 years ago now, I was on holiday and I was like, right, when I get back from holiday, I'm just going to do it. And so I did. So when I got back, I turned one of my shorter videos on Chen Long and why he's underrated and made it a far, far bigger video. Really enjoyed that. And it's just gone since then. So it was more kind of like a whole lot of process, but a lot of it was just, it really did stem from the BO stuff was really interesting, and I loved looking into all the facts and figures and the stories. But obviously doing it for them, I'm limited by what they let me do, but also the length of time. I just felt YouTube was where I could really just kind of show myself a little bit more and expand on those stories, and also just felt like someone telling stories in badminton was something that was missing from YouTube. There was a lot of tutorials or vlogs or reviews of rackets and string and shoes and equipment, but there wasn't anyone telling stories of badminton, and I still don't think there is too many of that anymore. But yeah, that's how I got into that. It's an interesting one. Is Gill Clark ever going to get featured on your platform, or doing IV session together? I think means like a live session together or something like that. I'm not quite sure. But the first question, will Gill Clark ever get featured on this platform? I'd absolutely love that. She is the voice of badminton. She must have had so many stories, being an absolutely fantastic player who achieved so much, a playing career of like probably about 15, 20 years, and now obviously been commentating for 30 plus years. It kind of one blend together. Plus, in the 90s, she also wrote regular articles for the Badminton magazine at the time. So her experience and knowledge and just the amount of stories she must have within the badminton world must be absolutely astronomical. So to pick her brain on a number of those would be fantastic. On top of that, Gill does know who I am because my mum and her were on the same badminton team for a number of years. And I think she even would look after me a little bit when I was a baby, because I think my mum did play a little bit after I was born, or she definitely went and kind of saw the players. So yeah, that obviously would be going in my favour in terms of getting Gill Clark to kind of maybe do a video or be interviewed. The difficulty is, and I think I've heard this from other creators, when it comes to Gill Clark, is that I think because of she has obviously her contract with BRF, but she also has obviously her own management team, and I think it's quite difficult. I believe, I think when I spoke to Hans Christian Wittinghus once about this. Obviously, they tried to get her onto the what's the Badminton Experience podcast. That's the one. Why couldn't I remember that for a second there? And I think the difficulty was that there might have been conflict of interest because of her ties with BRF or with something else. There was something that makes her quite difficult to agree to interviews. I have seen her do one. I think she did it for Bam Talk, the Indonesian like badminton press stuff. But I will ask her one, at some point, and hopefully she'll agree to it. But I think it is quite difficult to get her on anyone. I think a number of people have tried. But yeah, no, that's not to say that we'll ever rule it out. But I think it's going to be quite tricky. It might be when she stops commentating and stuff. But who knows? She'll probably be someone that will keep doing that for a number of years to come. I hope she does. But yeah, no, sorry, I can't give much more of an answer on that. I do hope it happens, but I can't see it happening either, unfortunately. What is the most challenging part of trying to play your first international challenge? Oh, it's been a long time since I played my first international challenge. I think the first one I played was in Slovakia, all the way back in 2007, I think, 2007. It was kind of, that one was semi-organised by England, which made things a little bit easier. All the flights and the hotel were booked, and so was organising the transport from the airport to the venue, to the area. So for me, it's probably that, actually. Once you're on your own, if you have to do everything yourself, is organising the transport, the hotels, everything, all that kind of stuff. Especially if you're first starting out, you never really had to do that stuff before. Sometimes getting a hold of tournament organisers was quite tricky, and sometimes, if you play in a tournament like Slovakia or any of those smaller European countries, or like bus schedules and transport to and from the airport and even from the hotel to the venue can sometimes be quite scarce, quite hard to do. I'm not quite sure, the person asking this question, where they would be playing their first international challenge, but I can imagine those sort of issues are kind of universal. They might be better now. Like I said, that's 18 years ago that I played my first one. So that was quite a challenge. Obviously, another one, and this is a challenge that kind of sticks with you, is that when you're playing an international challenge, again, if you're self-funded as well, is the pressure that you put on yourself. You're going all that way and you potentially might only play one match. That kind of thought in your mind, like, am I going to be wasting my time, wasting money, all this kind of stuff. Those kind of doubts and stuff are quite tricky. So getting over that pressure and being able to play what you're capable of is quite difficult. It does get a little easier, obviously, the more you do it. So obviously, for first time, that might be it. That might get, for me, I didn't think of that on my first few trips because I was just very excited to start playing international tournaments, starting to play. You get to see all the new players, you go into different countries. That's all quite exciting. So that kind of takes the first part. But after a little while, the pressure of knowing you have to deliver, or maybe you've played a year and you're still in the qualifying events, and you can start to have those doubts of, am I good enough? Is there point to this? I definitely went through that a little bit. But first international challenge, especially if you're going on your own, it's going to be organising all the right travel, organising practice courts, working out what your food is, everything, all the little details that you might not think about. So all the little things you need to get yourself organised before you go, that will make things a lot smoother. But yeah, no, that's probably the biggest challenges. Okay, what is more important, winning the Olympics or the All England for you? Well, I got close to neither of those, but if I could, that's actually a tricky one. I probably would say the Olympics, just because it's much more, you're playing not just for yourself, but your country. Obviously, it's a bigger tournament every 4 years. It's such a massive multi-sport event that I think if you can say that you're the Olympic champion, everyone around the world is going to go, wow, that's amazing. All England champion, badminton fans are going to be like, wow, that's really impressive. Non-badminton fans are going to be like, yeah, what? So I think the Olympics, but as a badminton fan, I think I'd still pick the Olympics. But the All England that's quite a tough question. But yeah, no, I would probably say the Olympic Games. Absolutely love your content. Cheers, mate. I'd love to hear your opinion on something. Do you think legendary men's singles players from the past, like Rudy Hartono, Morton Frost, Punch Gallen, and others in their prime, could compete with today's top players? If so, how and why? Well, I think the obvious answer, well, most people would answer saying no, because you watched those matches, like, Rudy Hartono, you're going back to the 1960s here. That's a long time ago. We're talking, that's like 50, 60 years ago. All those players that were mentioned, Morton Frost, he played up to the late 80s, Punch Galun also stopped in the 70s. And so it's kind of like, no, you watch their matches, it almost looks as if top under 17 players these days would be just as good. But, and there's a massive but to this, you have to consider the equipment that those guys played with, the training methods, what they played on, etc. The shoes they played with were literally plimp soles. If you grew up in, I can only speak for England here, but we had like uniform shoes, and like plimp soles it's like playing on a flip flop, basically a flip flop with a top on top. So that's absolutely, like, grip wise, the bare minimum. Support, absolutely none. No wonder. And then you combine the fact they played on, mainly the time it was just on concrete floor, or like hard wooden floor. No sprung wooden or anything like that, or cushioned courts. It was literally probably a mat just laid on top. And then the rackets. I can remember, if you're looking at like Rudy Hartono, that was like, if you're talking about the 60s and 70s there, I remember picking up a racket of my mum's from that period. She played with wooden rackets when she first played, and she first played in the 70s. So, even if you neglect the wooden ones, we're talking, if you ever played with a higher racket, think of it being like almost feeling like it's twice as heavy as that. It's absolutely crazy. And the string tension is probably like 15 pounds, like under half of what players these days play with. And the only way I can liken it is if you've ever gone to a club or anything, you've played with a higher racket, or maybe you've even picked up a really cheap racket with factory strings in it. That's still better in terms of string quality than what they were playing with, players back then. So when you watch certain players and you see it like really slow and stuff, it's like they're swinging a club with like fishing net in it. If you had someone with Rudy Hartono's ability born now, or in his 20s now, and he'd been trained with modern equipment, with shoes, you have to, when I watch those players, the skill level they've got and the abilities they've got, I can't say hand on heart would they be a top player today, but my gut feeling is they would be. A number of those players, they were like, if they were the absolute best of their time then, but you brought to everything and born them into now, they'd be good enough to adapt the way they played. Because, and I'll take Morton Frost. When he played and the Chinese player started to come about, he was like doing like this, and then late 70s, the early 80s, China joined, and they changed everything. And he said I remember once speaking to him, and he said that when the Chinese played, he was able to, over a period of time, obviously he had to play faster, so he trained harder and harder and adapted his game to be able to deal with the way the badminton had was going. So his ability to kind of adapt and evolve his game within his own little era, if he was now born today with his abilities and with modern equipment, modern rackets, he would still be able to adapt his approach and play more like what we'd see now. There's no way that I can see it that those players wouldn't. You could probably argue there's a few. Maybe physically they'd be not strong enough. But again, I think if they were born today and they grew up with the training that was required these days, I think they could be top. But if you took literally them with their equipment against today's, it's a no contest. And of course the game has progressed and got better. But the absolute best from every era, I would argue, that could compete if they... Yeah, I've already kind of gone. I'm not going to repeat myself. But yeah, love to hear what you think on that one. It's quite an interesting one. The last thing I'll say is there was actually, I remember seeing a show where they took top athletes, I think it's like swimming, athletics and cycling, and they got them to try to beat the records from way back, but in the same conditions. So I think for the running, they did it on like one of them ashen tracks with the same spikes that sprinters, for Jesse Owens, I think was the one. And the guy that had run like an easy sub 10, his time to Jesse Owens was very, very similar. If not, he wasn't as fast, or he was just a bit faster. It was very close. Now I know that's completely different, but it just goes to show that when you're comparing, you have to consider a lot of different factors. Which player or players do you think was not very flashy or seen as a future threat in their junior years, but proved to be a world-class player as they transitioned to the senior tournaments? Now, I saw this question and I racked my brain, and one jumped out at me. Now, I don't know how he was seen at the time, because the media of badminton back then is difficult, and this player is from China, so that makes it even harder. But the player that jumped out to me was Fu Haifeng, because in the junior days, he didn't win any junior medals. In fact, he didn't make the junior team. When I checked the World Junior team results and Asian juniors, you get to see the list of players. Fu Haifeng was not among them. Now, Fu Haifeng went on to become a 4-time world champion. He won the All England. He got to 3 Olympic finals in a row, winning 2 of them. He's the only player to win the Olympics twice with 2 different partners in the doubles events. So yeah, he achieved absolutely astronomical things. Obviously a Hall of Famer as well. But if you come out of juniors, you know, we sometimes do say, oh, this World Junior, check out for him. We usually only look at the champions or even players that might get to the finals. Fu Haifeng didn't even go to the tournament. And yeah, so who would have known that at that time would he have been a player that would absolutely, like, you know, change men's doubles? No. So I think he's probably my biggest example that I could think of. There's probably a few more. If you think of any, get in the comments. Okay, so these last 3 questions kind of follow on to what I want to talk about in terms of the future of this channel. Would you be open to doing an insane World Championship Finals video this year? It would be awesome if you could. Now, for any of you that are new to this channel or might not know, I did 2 years ago do 2 videos on amazing All England finals. Sadly, they kept getting copyright striked. One of them got actually completely blocked. They were fine for a few weeks, and then when the All England hit, suddenly they all got hit with these strikes. I took them down, tweaked out all the copyright bits, tried to put on some effects to kind of get around these issues. And again, when I put it up, after a few days, it was copyright striked again. So I took them down. I still have them, and I have been thinking about redoing them, obviously better audio quality, and just thinking of ways to get around those situations. But will I do one on the World Championship Finals? No, I'm not going to do one like that, although I have got an idea for something based around an absolutely insane World Championship Final, which, if I could make happen, would be absolutely amazing. What is your future goals for this channel? Or what are your future goals for this channel? Well, obviously my future goals are to keep growing, to keep improving my storytelling, my editing, everything, every aspect that goes into these videos. I want to keep improving it. Obviously grow subscriber account, be able to connect with more players, also connect with my viewers, finding ways to do that. I'd love to be in a position where I could possibly travel to some of these tournaments to do videos like Beckman's Breakdowns from the venue, or to get to interview players there and then. I will be at the All England this year for one day. That is through BWF, but I'd love to be in a position where that would be great and all. And I know a lot of people have spoken about, can I do commentary? I am in talks of with the BWF for doing that, but it's not BOS ultimate decision. It's actually in front, the media house that does it. So, but I'd actually love to be able to go to these tournaments like on my own. Obviously, I'd have to kind of link in through BWF to get accreditation and all that stuff. But to kind of go to these events and kind of just be able to expand these videos from just being done in my front room. So yeah, no, goals is just to keep growing, to keep getting better, to do all that kind of things. And one way I want to do that, and this is what I want to announce last, is I haven't got one ready to go now, but I am considering, very heavily considering, creating a Patreon. Something that all YouTubers do eventually. I've given this a lot of thought. I did think that when I reach 10,000 subscribers, I'd be in a position where it would seem like the right way, kind of like not earn the right to do it. That sounds absolutely ridiculous. I can't think of the words for it now, but where I'm in a position where if I want to take it to the next step, I can keep doing what I'm doing, but a Patreon, creating a Patreon where obviously, Patreon is a way of creating money for myself, of funding the channel, and that money obviously would go towards better equipment, being able to spend even more time on these videos, because I do currently coach, I do have a family as well, so you know, it takes a lot of time. This is a lot of stuff I just do on the side. It's a really cool hobby, and I don't mind keeping it that way. But if I want to keep growing this channel and making better and better videos, which is something I really am interested in doing, then obviously a way of, it costs money, basically. And you know, I do get a very small amount through YouTube Avenue, YouTube ad revenue, but obviously a Patreon is another way just to supplement that. Obviously, I wouldn't just say, give me your money and you're not going to get anything for it. The Patreon would include a lot of different things. I would keep it very, very affordable. I would say that out of the gate. How much, I don't know, I haven't fully decided. But the little things I've been thinking about adding to it would be something like early access to videos, match of the month, a match of the month where I would live stream a particular match, or I'll just create a video on it where I basically commentate on one match every month. Usually, I think to start with, I would pick that match, but as we progress, I'd let my patrons be the one to decide it. And basically, you'll get like kind of my commentary on it. And obviously, what I think is quite cool about that is that a lot of those matches, say we pick one from 10 years ago, there's a lot of context since that obviously commentators at the time absolutely have no access to, so you can kind of like, I don't know, I think it would be quite cool and quite fun, and like I said, a way to connect with people. Whether I do that through a live stream, or whether I would film it and just let you have the raw footage, I'd have to decide. I think a live stream is probably what most people would like to get out of that. Obviously, I would then edit those down to create YouTube videos as well. So even if you don't want to become a Patreon member, you'd probably still be able to see some of that. Another thing would be access to the full interviews with anyone I interview for videos, such as Christian Luque. I've got his full, we spoke for like 90 minutes plus. I've got that video, so obviously that would go on for patrons and anyone else. I did Vittinghus, but I've got plans to try and interview plenty more players and people involved in the badminton world. So, you know, access to those unedited raw interviews would also be for people on Patreon. There's possibly a regular live stream Q&A or discussion on a certain topic centered around badminton. So it could be like whatever, like who's the go-to badminton, that just jumped in my head. But stuff like that, we could, whatever. Again, that could be something that start with, I could pick the first topic and from there leave it to the patrons to kind of decide what topic needs to get discussed, and then we can just kind of chat about it. You know, like almost like a live Reddit stream in a way. I think that would be pretty cool. Yeah, like I said, I will try to make this. I will make it. I won't try. I will make it incredibly affordable. Because, yeah, like I said, currently outside of the thumbnails, I do absolutely everything. That's the research, the filming, the editing, the scripting, you know, the kind of hunting down clips and all that kind of thing. I do, sometimes I do get people that do help me with that side of things, if they're willing to kind of, oh, this is a really cool link, or I ask someone, yeah. So, but generally speaking, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to create these videos. And if I want to create more and better ones and expand the Ben Beckman Badminton channel, then obviously that's going to cost, that takes time, and ultimately, you know, money is the main thing. Yeah, I've got to live as well. So I do think that something like a Patreon is just a way to supplement that. And obviously, if you don't want to become one, it's absolutely fine. I'm still going to, the vast majority of my content will still be available free on YouTube. You're not going to miss out if you're not a Patreon, but there will be lots of cool little things like the stuff that I mentioned earlier. So like early access, the match of the month, full interviews, live stream Q&A or discussions, and yeah, there could be other ideas. I've got a few other ideas for later on, but I think for now that's pretty cool. I think that's pretty good. So if you do, I will obviously keep you all updated on how that's going, what's actually going to happen from that, and when it will happen, the price, everything. I'll announce that at a later date. And yeah, okay, perfect. In terms of the, just to quickly again, to remind you about the giveaway, you must subscribe to my channel, you must like the video, you must comment, and I will announce the winner, I think in like a week's time. So probably, I might even do it in the next Beckman's Breakdown, so I think we'll probably do it then. I think that just makes sense, seeing as that is going to be in about a week. So yeah, thanks ever so much for everyone who sent in their questions. Thank you to all my amazing subscribers, all 10,000 plus of you now. That does sound pretty cool. That does sound pretty wild. Again, yeah, obviously you're going to get in the comments to enter the giveaway. Oh, that was it. Sorry, the giveaway, yeah, you also need to comment. What you need to comment is your favourite player and why, and that's from any generation. So again, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.